welcome to episode number 88 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox, PHL, The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this right now, I appreciate you. I am glad that you're here, and I am excited for this week's episode of the show because we got a lot of things going on. I'm going to start our great contest, March Music Madness. Can't even say the word. I'm so excited. The bracket will be revealed in the final segment of the show and then posted along with the links to the podcast episode when it goes live. I'm going to talk about a section of esports that is growing, getting bigger by the day, and one that you may not consider when you think about esports in general. And then we're going to talk about indie games on Xbox. ID at Xbox had a big presentation, and we're going to go through all the cool things that were announced there. But before we do any of that, let's get into the 6 in 60 seconds. Overwatch League live events will officially return with 2 homestands on May 6th, one for the Houston Outlaws and one for the Dallas Fuel. The Coalition has announced it will end the Gears of War esports program at the conclusion of the current season. The Call of Duty Mobile World Championships will also return in 2022 with an over $2 million total prize pool. Elsewhere, EA has announced it will not hold an EA Play live event this year, instead electing to release information on their games when the time is right for each game. A New Japan fighting game developer roundtable has been announced for Monday overnight with Bandai Namco, SNK, Capcom, and Arc System Works among the attendees. And finally, upcoming VR game Moss Book 2 surprises its fans with a new gameplay trailer and a release date of March 31st. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. Yes, those are the 6 in 60 seconds for the week. Really caught me by surprise, that March 31st release date, considering they announced it on March 17th. 2 weeks between when the release date is revealed and the actual release date. That is pretty cool, if you ask me. I feel like more developers should take advantage of something like that, if their game is, ready to be released, obviously. Nobody wants any incomplete games coming out, even with the short notice between release date announcement and actual release. Also interesting to hear that EA will not do an EA Play this year. Kind of makes sense. A lot of their recent EA Plays have been meandering and not very big on information. So if they're going to wait and then blow out the games when they're ready, makes perfect sense to me. But let's not waste any more time and get into my first segment of the evening, which was featured in the 6 in 60 seconds. And that is the idea of mobile esports. Now, esports in general are a burgeoning industry, growing every single year, billion-dollar industry in the year 2021, and with the pandemic waning, hopefully, and things starting to open up, those numbers will only grow with the return of live events, like Overwatch League said, and things like that. But there is a sector of esports that I feel like sort of gets overlooked, is one that I just consider because it's something I talk about every day with the work that I'm doing at GameSpot at the moment. But when I thought about it, I realized mobile esports in the mobile games division are really growing at a much faster rate, or at least pulling a lot of the esports growth up with them, particularly in international markets. So I just wanted to go over 3 big titles in the mobile esports market that you may not consider when you're thinking about competitive gaming and things like that, but they actually have a very large following and a very lucrative path to victory should you try to pursue one of these games and you want to make a little bank on the side. First one is one that I mentioned in the 6 in 60 seconds. That is the Call of Duty Mobile World Championship. Call of Duty Mobile has its own esports league separate from the Call of Duty League. This year is actually kicking off on March 31st, and all eligible Call of Duty Mobile players can compete to earn in-game rewards. And then the best of the best will compete for a share of the $1.7 million finals prize pool, which is the biggest single event in the game's history. And it lays out all of the stages that the World Championships will be taking and how long into the year they will go. March 31st, like I said, is the start of this, but it will actually run all the way until December with a World Championship Finals as an offline event somewhere. This report does not say where that will be hosted, but it says that there are 5 basic segments to this league. There's solo play, where you can, if you're doing like solo matchups, you can qualify that way. There's team play. Second stage is team play. That happens in May. June and July are the regional quarterfinals, split between 3 weekends. The first weekend being Latin America and India, the second weekend being EU and Japan, and the third weekend being all of North America. That is July the 1st to the 3rd. The regional playoffs will then take place in August. Each of those 5 regions will have their own set times that they will be featured on YouTube for those regional playoffs. Latin America will be August 13th and 14th. India will be the same day. EU will be the next week, August 20th and 21st, as will Japan. And then North America's will be the following weekend, the last weekend in August. And then finally, after they get the teams and all the finalists and everybody's qualified, we're talking about the World Championships, that $1.7 million prize pool specifically for that event, happening in December. It doesn't say where yet. Obviously, it's going to be in one of those 5 regions, but we don't know which one because they haven't announced it yet. But the fact that a mobile game, right? A game on your cell phone, which to some people is still, limited to Candy Crush and that's it, or games of that ilk. The fact that it could have a roadmap of their competitive scene laid out like this, as if it were a, I don't want to say big time because mobile gaming is big time, but a bigger, let's say, esport or game would probably surprise a lot of people. Like if I showed people this roadmap and covered up the logos and didn't let them know what game it was, they would probably guess like a Rainbow Six. Or some sort of Call of Duty International League that had just started that they hadn't heard of yet, or something like that. I think they would go to a hypothetical scenario that doesn't exist before they would go to, oh, that's for the mobile game? That's interesting. And I think that encompasses my whole argument here, is that mobile esports is huge. And it is getting bigger every single year with games that are exclusive to mobile devices, creating their own esports leagues. This is just the first one that we're talking about here. It will be interesting to see if the Warzone mobile version that is on the horizon, that was, I think, confirmed last week or the week before, will impact this. But for now, Call of Duty Mobile has itself a nice league going on here, which is great to see. Now, the second one is for a game that people may have heard of, on their phones, maybe seen it in the App Store, but unless you're a certain age, it really probably is not something that you have played yourself on your cell phone, and that's Garena Free Fire. Garena Free Fire has its own huge World Series esports events as well, the next event of which will be held in Singapore. Their World Series coming to Singapore in May, featuring multiple regions around the world, from MENA to North America to India, Latin America, Thailand and Vietnam, Taiwan, Brazil, all over the world. 12 teams battling it out to earn a spot in the finals, and then the finals has 12 teams of its own. So 10 slots are decided before the play-ins. The play-ins decide the final 2, and then the top 12 teams will play against each other for the World Series championship in Garena Free Fire. Now, this is a game that you may not have even heard of, Garena Free Fire, but just to put into perspective what kind of viewership this is getting. So the Esports Awards in 2021 named Free Fire the Mobile Game of the Year, held in Dallas back in November. Second year in a row that it won the game, or that won the award, excuse me. And Garena reports that the finals of the Free Fire World Series 2021 in Singapore, which I believe were held in November as well, November, December, hit a peak of 5.4 million concurrent online viewers, which is the highest peak viewership of any esports match in history, according to esports charts. Now, that I would put into dispute. I think League of Legends would have something to say about that. But it's still very impressive to be even considering a mobile game you may not have heard of before with League of Legends, the premier esports presentation in the world. And it's holding its own here very well. But so, again, I keep talking about how the mobile arena is much more fertile for popular esports than it first seems. And Free Fire is a perfect example. This is a 75 person, I think 50 or 75 person to a match battle royale, very much a Fortnite style sort of game, but contained completely on your phone, and a game that just it's a basic battle royale system, but it has gotten so popular and has reached out and partnered with so many different things that it's become a huge game in its own right. So now they're going to do a whole nother season in Singapore, perhaps maybe somewhere else again, which would be nice, to get some esports events outside of other parts of the world, bring them into North America. I know League of Legends is doing it, but I digress. But Garena Free Fire is another one to have your eyes on if you're thinking about mobile esports, because, like I said, the land is very fertile. You just have to know where to look. And the last one I'm going to mention, quick honorable mention, I should say, is Pokemon Unite. I don't specifically call that a mobile esport, as while the mobile version is the better of the two, in my humble opinion, I think it plays better on my iPad than on my Switch. I believe that they focus on Switch, or at the very least crossplay, so it's not a mobile-only esport like the ones I'm talking about here. So the final one that I do want to talk about is a game that is, believe it or not, turning 4. It is about to celebrate its 4th anniversary this coming year, or this coming week, I should say. And it is a humongous esport. Again, another battle royale, which seems to be a thing on mobile. A lot of battle royale esports are successful. And I'm talking about PUBG Mobile. PUBG Mobile esports, if you would believe it, is absolutely humongous. Now, it's bigger outside of America, I will say that. Like, I'm looking at their current schedule, what's coming up in their spring split here, and it's mostly Latin America and Brazil that I'm seeing on the schedule right now. There are some Middle Eastern teams, there are some teams from Asia and stuff like that. It's not so much a North American esport yet. I believe it could get there eventually. But right now, yes, we are looking at mostly Brazil, Latin America, Arabia, and the Asian teams over there on the other side of the world. But again, this is a tremendously big esport played by millions of players around the world. And just to give you an idea of what PUBG Mobile's Pro League is capable of, this is a press release that I got back in October of last year, Thursday, October 28th of last year, talking about the PUBG Mobile Pro League North American Finals. Not only, again, an esport you probably didn't even know was happening, let alone having a tournament big enough where there is a North American final here. 40 teams from around the world came into these North American finals, looking for a chance to compete in the global championships. Those global championships, by the way, had a $6 million prize pool. $6 million, higher than Garena's was. And they had a sizable amount of players as well. So, again, PUBG Mobile doing perhaps just as good, if not better, than the console version, and doing better than some other major esports. There aren't many esports that can say they're throwing around $6 million in a total prize pool. And it's shocking to a lot of people. People, they hear, again, I keep saying this, they hear mobile and they think of, your grandma crushing candy or Pokemon Go, which is, has a league of its own, right? That's a little bit different. But no, there is a section of mobile gaming, which I talked about before on this show, that is humongous. And there's a section of that is esports focused and very, very exciting. And very, it's fun to watch. It's entertaining. Their presentation is very good. The action is good. The players are great. It's a lot of fun to take in for a game that is, as I've said, on mobile. Other mobile esports that come to mind, like I said, Pokemon Unite, but I kind of split that between Switch, mostly on Switch. So yeah, my point here is when thinking about the esports realm in general, right? Our minds tend to focus on League of Legends, Dota, Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, fighting game community tournaments, things that are right up in our face, right? The biggest games, the biggest marketing budgets, right up in our face. Like League of Legends Worlds is the biggest esport event of the year. Dota International is up there as well. But mobile esports are getting there. Slowly but surely, they are getting there. And they're getting there through an online system that is worlds better, believe it or not, than the console games because they're built for mobile phones. They're built to use cell phone, cellular reception, and Wi-Fi. They work better on Wi-Fi, of course, but they are built for both. So the online components inside these games are a bit more advanced, a bit more higher functioning. And they're building fan bases around the world because they're free apps to download. It's amazing. It's amazing how this works and how people haven't caught on to it sooner. But I feel like with more exposure and more things more tournaments like this going on, more live tournaments, and that's for esports in general, more live tournaments to get the games in front of people's faces, I feel like mobile esports will be a huge, huge thing in the coming years. And I'm forgetting a ton of games too. There's Bang Bang Mobile Legends, there's Arena of Valor, and more to come, I'm sure. So just keep an eye on your mobile devices when you're thinking about esports. Keep a thought out there for things like PUBG Mobile, Garena Free Fire, and the like. You never know what you might find, right? You never know, like the next big game in esports could be sitting there waiting for you to download it off of the app store that your phone connects to. Unless it's Fortnite, in which case you're not getting it on iOS, right? Haha, but that's a different story for another day. But yeah, just keep mobile esports in your mind, and remember that as much as it has been maligned in years past, and it's a airing of grievances that is correct, it is warranted for sure. Just remember that mobile gaming is becoming more and more and more harder to discern from regular console gaming every single day. It's only getting bigger, and the esports market is a perfect example of that. So, when we come back from our first break, we will talk about the ID at Xbox presentation yesterday, everything from Tunic to WrestleQuest, and all the games that were announced right then and there. Stick around. Okay, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 88, Eric Lindros episode here. Also, I did make a slight reference to this in the introduction to the podcast in the last segment, but I did want to say a few things about the passing of Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon. As some of you may know, when I am not talking about video games or esports, I am a huge pro wrestling fan, and Razor Ramon was a favorite of mine growing up. He started that character right when I turned about 5, 6 in that range. I remember vividly being a young boy and watching the match where the kid at the time turned into the 1-2-3 kid by beating Razor in that fluke match. I remember having conversations about it with my mom and dad as a child about how surprising that was. He was always interesting, and unfortunately not always in a good way. Just he had his demons. He had things that he had to come around and deal with. He did eventually. But when he was in the ring, he was very entertaining. He was very good. The Razor's Edge is an iconic finisher, and from the hey yo to the Cuban accent that some people actually thought he was Cuban, even to this day. After they found out he passed away, they realized, oh, he wasn't actually a Cuban guy. He was just some dude named Scott Hall. And just the stories that have come out about how giving he was back to the industry and how nice he was to the other wrestlers and how he thought of the younger guys. And it was a wonderful, touching tribute for a man who absolutely deserved it. And I am sad to see him go in the way that he did. He will be missed terribly. I know that I'm going to load up WWE 2K22 and play a couple matches with Razor as soon as I get some time to breathe. And I suggest that you take a listen to his theme song while you're driving around, driving to work or whatever, just as a small little tribute. I did it when I was picking up my girls on Tuesday night. I drove to the gym, I drove to the gym on Monday night, right after it was announced, and played the song. So it's a great song. That helps. So that definitely helps too. But all right, enough of the sad stuff. Rest in peace, Scott Hall. Let's talk about ID at Xbox. Had a huge event on Wednesday. In fact, it was so huge, it caught some people by surprise. They expected it to be about, 30 minutes, 30 or 40 minutes, excuse me, like a normal presentation, that sort of thing, like a Nintendo Direct or a State of Play or what have you. It was 3 hours long. It was 3 hours long. They had interviews with developers, and they had gameplay footage and stuff like that. Cool. Very, very cool. But, yeah, it's a long one, and I think it caught some people by surprise. One person said, "I love you, Xbox, but I got places to be and games to play right now, so I'll check back with this when it's over." And I understand that. 2-3 hours when you're expecting about 30 to 40 minutes is jarring. So if you had only a bit of time to watch, and you had to watch in that bit of time, so be it. But let's run down everything that came out in case you missed it. Very, very cool lineup of indie games. First one is Immortality. It's an interactive movie trilogy made by the person Sam Barlow who made Her Story. You're finding out what happened to a woman named Marissa Marcel by exploring footage from her lost movies. Again, very Her Story-esque, except not using a cell phone this time. Her Story really blew people away when that first came out, so I'm very excited to see that he is making a trilogy. I'm curious to see where this one goes, if it ends up being connected in some way. I don't know if that's going to happen. It wasn't announced that's going to happen, but that would be an interesting little twist to connect it to the previous games. But cool. More from Sam Barlow, always a good thing. Next one is Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, coming way of Kepler Interactive and Aurora A4, open world action RPG where guns and gods collide. A game that is described by the developer as an epic journey of vengeance, gunpowder, and magic in humanity's last stand, developed by the same team who made Ashen, a Dark Souls-esque sort of action RPG a couple years ago. Is a day one Game Pass title coming to Series X, Series S, and Xbox One later this year. Another game, the next game announced in the presentation was Cursed to Golf, where you're playing golf, but you're dealing with all kinds of crazy obstacles, both supernatural and natural. Made by Thunderful Games, published by Thunderful Games, developed by Chuhai Labs, coming out PC in the future, but it is coming to Xbox as well. Looked very manic. Looked like one of those games where you're trying to concentrate on one thing and there's so many things going on around you. Cool little idea there as well. That was one that kind of piqued my interest a little bit, but there are better ones in the presentation, which I will get to. Escape Academy, notable for being the first ever published game by IM8bit's publishing wing, which IM8bit used to be like an art studio, a video game themed art studio, or like prints and stuff like that. Now they're getting into game publishing, partnering with Skybound Games on this and developer Coin Crew. It's basically, it was described as a school where promising students trained to become escape room masters. So you're basically going through different escape rooms, more than a dozen. Apparently will be in this game. Encourages co-op. 2-player co-op will be available. Not sure if it will get any higher than that in the future. And it launches sometime this year for Xbox Series X and Xbox One. My only issue with this is, are those escape rooms procedural, or are they, one solution and then you're done? And I ask that because I feel like that would inhibit the shelf life of the game if they're just 12 predetermined escape rooms and you have to get all the way through them, so that when you're done, you don't play the game anymore. That, I don't know if they're maybe add more, or if there's some will be procedural, or if they're all procedural, or what's going on there. It just says masterfully handcrafted rooms designed by experienced experts in the field. Great. What happens when you're done all 12? Are they banking that the 12 will take long enough that they can create more and put them in as an update or something like that? Not sure, but that's what piqued my interest on that one. Seems like a cool idea, but I feel like you're putting a shelf life on it by not having some sort of other thing to do in the game. Next is Whalefall. Whitehorn Games bringing this one out. Call it a combination SRPG, JRPG set in a high fantasy world inspired by the Lord of the Rings, the Suikoden series, and the Final Fantasy games. That's a lot of good good titles, all in one place. apparently this has to do with conflicting over the remains of dead whales, hence whalefall. Press release read, the economic, technological, and military boons from the whales' bodies are considerable, and so is the conflict over their remains. Players will command the armies of Riverwatch to bring an end to a sinister plot that shoots down the legendary creatures and throw the world into chaos. So, interesting premise there. We'll have to see more when it comes out sometime in the future. Game Pass was not mentioned for this one. Next up, we had what might have been my favorite announcement from the whole thing, and that is a fantasy RPG, pixelated graphics, and pro wrestling called WrestleQuest. It's basically a turn-based Final Fantasy-style RPG, but everybody is wrestlers. They're in this pro wrestling universe. They even got some actual legendary wrestlers to be a part of this. Macho Man Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, the Road Warriors, Coco Beware, Jeff Jarrett, Booker T. The list goes on. It's just a very cool concept. The trailer was awesome. The concept is great. The fact that it was revealed that Retromania Wrestling has been hiding an advertisement for the game in plain sight as an Easter egg since it launched last April, and nobody picked up on it. They thought it was just some guy in the background. That's amazing. I'm loving everything about this game so far. I'm loving the vibe, I'm loving the look, I'm loving the graphics, I'm loving the music, everything. So I am definitely in on this coming out, hopefully sooner rather than later. I need to know what Mega Cat is doing over there so I can see more of this game, please. We had some Xbox Game Pass announcements as part of this presentation. Tunic, out now on Xbox Game Pass. That's actually next on my list. I really want to get into it. Loving the Link to the Past vibes. Read some reviews where they might say it's a little bit obtuse, so I'll have to see if I can, deal with that. But otherwise, it's out now, and it apparently is very good. A great game to play. Crusader Kings 3 coming to Xbox Game Pass on March 29th. The major 4X survival kingdom simulator, not survival, simulation. Kingdom simulator. Crusader Kings 3. It's too big for me. I can't do games like that. They fascinate me. They really do. But I just don't have the time to sit and build an entire kingdom, and everything that comes with it. It just looks like a really fun game, but a little too complicated for my blood at the moment. Not saying I wouldn't try it, but at the moment, not feeling it. Trek to Yomi, which also featured during PlayStation's State of Play last week, the 2D side-scrolling black and white samurai combat game, is available when it comes out this spring on Xbox Game Pass as well, which is really cool. Devolver, I feel like they don't miss. I feel like they just don't miss. And that really fascinates me. So the fact that this is coming from Devolver as well is really cool. And then we had a pair of montages showing off multiple games coming out soon for Xbox Game Pass. Paradise Killer, a text-based narrative adventure, is out now. Kraken Academy coming out March 22nd. Not quite sure what's going on there. And then Beacon Pines and Citizen Sleeper coming out in the future. Some just little, high-profile indie games coming to Game Pass as well. Increasing that Xbox Game Pass subscriptions value, man. It really is. The games that are coming out for that at any given time are, God, there's so many. So many to just sit and get lost in for a while. And every time they have an announcement like this, it just gets more and more tempting. Not tempting, I already have it. But more and more tempting to someone who doesn't have it yet to pick it up, because it's an awesome subscription. They have some really good games on there, and the list is growing with every event, like I said. So there's your spotlight. There's your ID at Xbox spotlight. I do like that Xbox gives time to their indie games to impress people, to be out front with the people so they can see it for themselves. I do wonder though why they haven't figured out how to do one for their normal, not normal, but for their first party in-house sort of things. They did the E3, quote unquote E3 showcase last year. That was excellent. The one that ended with the debut of Redfall. But why can't they do that more than once a year is my question. Sony, for all the flack that the Sony States of Play get, it opens the door for the big titles when the showcases finally do happen. Also, they have been getting better, I think, at the regular State of Play updates. I do think that presentation is getting better every time they do it. So another benefit of the doubt has to be given there. But I don't understand why Xbox hasn't figured their own out yet. They certainly have the portfolio for it, and the way that they're buying studios, that portfolio is growing exponentially every day. So if they ever wanted to have an Xbox Presents or just sit down and show us their stuff, another showcase, maybe since you had the E3 showcase in June, you could do a showcase in March, or you could do one in September, that sort of thing, just to keep things a little more consistent, and so your fans don't go crazy wondering when the next update is, because you're not telling them. So the ID at Xbox presentation was good. I wish Xbox would figure out a way to do it with their general games, but it's neither here nor there. Good stuff from Xbox. Coming up after the break, I reveal the bracket for the March Music Madness Challenge with a $50 gift certificate, gift code, whatever you want to call it, to the one digital storefront of your choice on the line. Predictions will open up as soon as this episode posts tomorrow. But after this, we'll get into the bracket. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheese Sticks and Controllers, episode number 88. Coming into the home stretch here, the final segment of the evening. Let's talk about the official bracket of the March Music Madness 2022 contest. The bracket that you will be predicting over the weekend for a chance to win a $50 gift code to whichever digital storefront you want, be it Xbox Live Marketplace or PlayStation Network, Steam Store, Nintendo eShop, whatever it is you want. $50 too. You tell me if you win, and I will make it happen. So we have 64 games, 64 games here. They have been seeded. They have been placed. We know what we're doing. Thank you to everyone who submitted games. Very much appreciate your contribution to this bracket here. Let's go through the choices here. I did split them by region. Unfortunately, the brackets you will be predicting on do not have their region names, which makes me upset. I am particularly proud of one that I will talk about shortly. So the first region is called the World of Balance region, and the reason for that is the number one seed in this region and the number one overall seed in the tournament is Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI takes the number one seed in the entire bracket. So this region is named for them, 1 versus 16. Final Fantasy VI will be taking on a game that I could not believe came across as a suggestion, but it did, and that's Pepsi Man. Pepsi Man makes the field of 64 thanks to a suggestion from a friend of mine. I laughed, I did, but I definitely included it in this list. So your 1 versus 16 there is Final Fantasy VI versus Pepsi Man. 2 versus 15 in this section is Demon's Souls versus Fez. I personally love the Fez soundtrack, but Demon's Souls soundtrack is also very good. Not sure what is going on there, but there's a reason they're 2 versus 15, I will say that. The 3-14 matchup is an interesting one because I feel like they both have very, very good soundtracks in their own ways. They both offer completely different things, and that is the original, the OG Super Mario Brothers 1985 Nintendo Entertainment System, the game that kickstarted the gaming industry as a whole, basically, versus Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, the law-based visual novel, first coming out for the Game Boy Advance in Japan, then getting ported to the DS, and having all their games on the DS and 3DS since, with a Switch version as well recently. This is an interesting matchup, especially for a 3 versus 14. Not sure. There could be an upset there. In my heart, I'm saying that. I'm probably wrong, but that's an interesting matchup as well. 4 versus 13, Mega Man 2 versus Crazy Taxi. I love this matchup. I just think that, Crazy Taxi is great, and then it gets matched up against one of the best Mega Man soundtracks of all time, so that anything could happen there. The 5 versus 12 in this region is Sonic 3 and Knuckles versus NBA Jam, another game I did not expect to see on this list, but was suggested to me by a pal. NBA Jam made the list thanks to that suggestion. Very, very cool to see it here. 6 and 11 in this region is an interesting one. Journey versus DuckTales, the original Nintendo DuckTales, a fantastic soundtrack with one of the most iconic gaming songs ever in the moon. But the whole soundtrack is fantastic. And Journey, oh man, what can you say about Journey? Just remastered to celebrate its 10th anniversary since release. Can't believe the game is 10 years old already. Just an absolutely wonderful piece of musical achievement by Austin Wintory. Put him on the map, and rightfully so. So it's good to see it making the bracket here. 7 versus 10, we have Earthbound versus Killer Instinct from the Xbox One, the newest Killer Instincts soundtrack, which is very, very cool. Love that addition to this bracket. Goes up against a tough matchup in Earthbound, I would say, but the fact that it's on here at all is pretty cool. And then your 8 and 9 in this region, I love this matchup. Two titans of indie music coming at here in an 8 versus 9. It's actually the perfect 8 versus 9 matchup, if you ask me. And that is Cuphead versus Bastion. That's one that makes you think. Both of those soundtracks are phenomenal. They both sound completely different. I don't know which way that one's going to go. I really can't. Maybe the hardest first round matchup in the bracket to predict, if you ask me. So that is the World of Balance region, named after the world in Final Fantasy VI, as it is the number 1 seed in that region, and again, the number 1 overall seed in the bracket. Region number 2, containing the second overall seed, we are going to the 1999 AD region, and that should spoil what the number 1 seed in this region is. That is Chrono Trigger. No surprise here, Chrono Trigger, one of the best soundtracks of all time. Fully expected it to have a showing, and it certainly did. Going up against the 16th seed Hotel Dusk Room 215. This was one of my 5 suggestions. I get suggestions. It's my bracket, dang it. Very underrated soundtrack from a very underrated game. I wish they would bring the sequel to North America. I kind of have slight hope for it after seeing like the Famicom Detective Agency remakes, remasters, whatever you want to call them, that came out last year. I have hope that Hotel Dusk might see a resurgence on the Switch. I'm not holding my breath too hard per se, but I would really like to see that happen. Number 2 in this region is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the game that can seemingly do no wrong. 5 years old, still going strong. Going up against the 15th seed Parappa the Rapper, which unfortunately, as much as I love that game, kind of hit a buzzsaw here in the first round. I could be wrong. There could be a strong surge, but I think it's, if I had to pick a certainty in this region, the first 2 seeds are definitely those. 3 versus 14 gets a little more interesting, though. 3 being Final Fantasy IX. This also is the only region with 2 different Final Fantasies in it. The rest of them only have 1 each, which is impressive that there are 5 Final Fantasies on this list to begin with. Number 3 is Final Fantasy IX taking on Streets of Rage 2, an absolute retro darling from the Sega Genesis area. Go Straight is one that I still play very, very regularly. Dreamer, also very good. So that's an interesting matchup there. 4 versus 13, also very interesting. Just 2 different eras happening here. We have Super Mario 64 at the 4 versus Hollow Knight at 13. Hollow Knight is one that has escaped me. That's a game I have not played yet. I know I want to. I really, really want to, and I really want to get into Silksong when that finally comes out, whenever that is. But Mario 64 is an all-timer, too, so that could go either way as far as I'm concerned. The 5-12 in this region, Final Fantasy X versus Secret of Mana. Nice to see Secret of Mana make the list here from a suggestion from a pal of mine. Do appreciate that. Final Fantasy X, great, great soundtrack. Maybe my favorite single Final Fantasy song of all time. I mean, my mood changes. It changes every day to be able to say that. But To Xanarkand is an all-time classic and might be one of those ones where if you put a gun to my head, that would be what I would pick to be the best one ever. 6 versus 11 in this region is Mass Effect 2 versus Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Scott Pilgrim is an interesting one. That game kind of sits as a cult classic, a bit of a obscure, out-of-mind sort of game, but that soundtrack from Anamanaguchi is absolutely out of this world. So there could be a little upset special going here with Scott Pilgrim over Mass Effect 2. We will have to see. But I do dig that matchup in the first round here. Very, very cool. 7 versus 10 in this region is Halo 2 versus Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, The Tale of Two Twos. I have no idea which way this is going to go. None whatsoever. It could go either way. I have no idea. So, good luck to both of those games, and good luck to you trying to predict it. I said Cuphead versus Bastion might have been the first hardest to predict in the first round. This one might be the second one. Definitely the hardest in this region, if you ask me. And then the 8 versus 9 is Jet Set Radio at 8 versus Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater at 9. 2 very, very good soundtracks there. Not sure which way it's going to go. Again, another solid 8 versus 9 there. So number 1 seed in this region, Chrono Trigger. Number 2, Breath of the Wild. Number 3, Final Fantasy 9. We are now going to the third region, which I jokingly call the Nether region, and that's because the number 1 seed in this place is Minecraft. Minecraft is another one with a sneaky good soundtrack. You don't think of Minecraft for its music, but my goodness, are some of those songs absolutely phenomenal. So that takes number 1 seed in this region, taking on number 16, Star Ocean, Till the End of Time, recommended by a dear friend of mine. This is one that I did not play back in those days, but I do understand that the soundtrack is very, very good. 2 versus 15 makes me sad because of who the 15 seed is. Again, this is one of those ones where I don't hold very much confidence for an upset. And that is Final Fantasy 7 versus GoldenEye 007. Poor James Bond is all I'm going to say about that. I could be wrong, like I said. I could be wrong about all the things I'm saying here, but I don't think I will be. GoldenEye versus Final Fantasy 7 is a tough draw for James Bond in this tournament. 3 versus 14, an interesting matchup here, but I feel like if anything's going to cause an upset, it's going to have to be a huge groundswell. And that is the 3 seed Undertale facing the 14 seed Silent Hill 2. All of the Silent Hill games have a phenomenal soundtrack. From the first game, She is one of my favorite songs in video games ever. And Undertale is just banger after banger. Really, Toby Fox outdid himself in that one. So we'll see what happens there. Interesting matchup at 3 versus 14. And then 4 versus 13, we're looking at Ico, which is a highly underrated soundtrack. Some consider it the best soundtrack ever made, versus Portal, which still alive, classic comedy song. Lots of different vibes in that soundtrack as well. We'll have to see what happens there. 5 versus 12, I would like to put a disclaimer. I promise you I had nothing to do with this. It is just how the random number generator shook things out. I did not do this purposefully, but I love that it happened. 5 versus 12, Doom 2016 versus Doom 1993. The Battle of the Dooms. The Doom. Somebody call Invader Zim, or Gur. 2 phenomenal soundtracks, 2 phenomenal games, 2 different eras. I have no idea which way that's going to go. That's an interesting one. And I love that they're pitted against one another in this bracket. It's so good. When I did the random number generator to put the 5 seeds with the 12 seeds, and that's what came up. I did that for every segment. And that's what came up. Oh, boy. That was cool. That was really, really cool. So, love that matchup. 6 versus 11, Super Metroid versus Mega Man X, 2 classic Super Nintendo games there. Love this matchup as well. Phenomenal soundtracks both. Super Metroid does the atmosphere and the mood better, but Mega Man X has more memorable tracks, so we'll see how that vote goes. 7 versus 10, another very interesting one. Castlevania Symphony of the Night taking on the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. 2 very different soundtracks here, but we'll see how that one shakes out. And finally, in the Nether region, 8 versus 9 is Persona 5 versus Red Dead Redemption 2. Interesting soundtrack matchup there in the 8 versus 9. Another absolutely tough call, as the 8 versus 9 should be, making the Nether region, I love saying that, one of the, I think, toughest regions of the 4. And finally, we go to the Good Egg Galaxy, named after the first world that you visit in the number 1 seed for this region, Super Mario Galaxy. Perhaps the best Super Mario soundtrack of all time. My little bias there. There are some that I really, really like, but that one is just the main track, Super Mario Galaxy, gives me goosebumps. And there aren't many games that can say that. Going up against a 16 seed here, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Very, very, very underrated soundtrack there as well. Glad to see that it made its way here. But tough draw in the first round, but an awesome soundtrack that you should look up when you have a chance. 2 versus 15 on this side, we have Octopath Traveler, one of the newer games on this list, versus Hotline Miami. That's a sneaky good one. Both of those games have great soundtracks. This is the first one in particular, but I love that matchup too. 3 versus 14, we have The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time versus Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. Two big-time RPGs, one bigger than the other, obviously. In fact, one is considered one of the greatest games of all time, and the other one, also very good, but again, not sure how it's going to fare here. 4 versus 13 makes me sad because I feel like the 13 seed here ran into a buzzsaw, and it's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. That is Final Fantasy XIV in the 4 slot versus number 13, Capcom versus SNK 2, Millionaire Fighting 2001. Love that soundtrack. Love the song This Is True Love Making. Love it all. Love it all. Love it all. But Final Fantasy XIV is an absolute juggernaut that I am not convinced Capcom versus SNK 2 can surmount. Next, the 5 versus 12 in the Good Egg Galaxy, we have Street Fighter 2, classic arcade soundtrack, taking on Shovel Knight, a classic retro soundtrack, but from modern times. Interesting matchup here, too. This could go really either way. I feel like both of these soundtracks have a lot of merit, one being more, revered classically than the other, but definitely some good stuff there. 6 versus 11, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt versus Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Two epic orchestral soundtracks going head-to-head there. 7 versus 10, The Last of Us versus Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, which is also a very good Mario soundtrack. The Last of Us, though, man, Gustavo really, really, really outdid himself with this soundtrack and the sequel soundtrack, but this is the first game in particular. Just phenomenal stuff all the way around in that game. And then the 8 versus 9 seed, another really tough one to call, Donkey Kong Country versus Pokemon Red and Blue. That is a rough one because both of those could easily move on to the next round and then keep going if you ask me. But the bracket is done. Like I said, it will be available on challonge.com. That is CHALLONGE.com. The full URL is challonge.com/cheesesteaks controllers March Music Madness 2022. That's what they get for letting me use a custom URL. So check that out. I will post the link, obviously, on all social medias. Get your predictions in. And if your predictions do the best, if your bracket is perfect or close to perfect, after the results of the Twitter polls happen, you will be $50 richer on your favorite digital video game marketplace. The one of your choice, you will have $50 extra to get whatever game it is you're looking for at the time. So, with that, we are at the end of Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 88. I thank you so much for listening. As always, our show is presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio. We will be back again next week for number 89. Got some things cooking in the background. Hope to have some really good interviews for you in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you have a fantastic week right behind it. And we will be back again next week for episode 89 and more of the latest in esports and video games. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Goodbye.